RW 팀한테 주의할 점은 일단 다 신인이다 보니까 아마 조금 이제 적극적으로 하지 않을까. 그래서 좀 라인전에서 뭐 조심 좀 해야 될 것 같아요.
Well, it doesn't look like the laning phase was necessarily the problem there for TOP that game. It was more like the Baron taking phase in literally the last second, because Xuzhu and Rogue Warriors as a whole just seem to have an uncanny ability to take the Baron.
Yeah, and if we were taking a look at really bad stats as, you know, indications of narratives, then a 50% Baron for the very first game would be one of them. Because, of course, it's an anomaly that Rogue Warriors managed to pick it up, but it still was, without that blip, an almost perfect game coming out for TOP.
Yeah, TOP were playing really strongly, and I think a lot of that was through the top lane matchup where you saw that, like, massive 50 CS lead in the lane. 369, just absolute monster there. Farm Lord on the Gangplank, and that's why he's going to be our MVP.
No surprise at all. I was pointing out his huge damage chart after the game, and the fact that he got it pretty much in a 1v1 scenario. I mean, it was only in a couple of extra team fights beyond that. Means that he was constantly pushing out his lane. He was constantly pushing towards the enemy turret, and that's what wins you MVPs over here.
Because there weren't a lot of team fights. We can say, you know, he wasn't really impactful in team fights, but how many team fights really were there last game? Like 3 or 4 maybe, I'd say. Don't quote me on that because I'm bad at counting. We've all seen me do wrong or we've all seen me do terrible arithmetic live on air, but that's fine. I think the problem for Rogue Warriors coming into this is they need to be a little bit more careful with their play. Maybe they need that proactivity that Ben was talking about in that video, because they didn't really have that, and the one time they did was HuaTian's first ultimate up into the top lane, and since that failed, everything else seemed to crumble.
I'm going to have to echo you on that point, because of course they need to pick out something that is unconventional in terms of their play. Love the TF, didn't really love the execution so much in Irelia. I think it was one of those games in which potentially they should have gone to either the bottom side, used it to pick out the jungler, or just not really use it on somebody who has a flash and can get out of an easy gank. Pretty much what I'm talking about is the fact that TOP know how to win against Rogue Warriors. They're confident in their individual mechanics, so all they need to do is counter the team composition that Rogue Warriors get for themselves.
I think the key for Rogue Warriors is going to be finding another unique pick on the level of the Echo, because something about the Echo that was nice was it worked in the composition, it worked against the lane, and it was something that HuaTian knew very well. The TF sort of hit 2 of those boxes. Theoretically, if that top gank had gone well, would have been great, but like you said, Gangplank has a pretty easy time getting out of that particular gank because he has the oranges. He can just cleanse himself away from that stun instantly. What have you accomplished? So I want Rogue Warriors to either go back to their version of standard or find another outside pick that they know they can do well on.
Yeah, and when we talk about the composition, if you take a look at their jungle in the Olaf as well, very late game beefy champion. The only pretty remarkable thing that I would say is, of course, flashing over and stealing the Baron with his Q and also his auto attacks. But other than that, a very late game champion. Not really a fan of that when it comes to Rogue Warriors, because they need multiple bridges into the late game. Only having one and relying on that to work out definitely doesn't really, you know, it doesn't inspire a lot of confidence when it doesn't work out after the first game.
And consistency is another factor as well, because Xuzhu giveth, Xuzhu taketh away.
Of course.
Because the first Baron fight, he was like, hey, I'm going to come in, flash in here, steal it with an undertow. Second Baron fight, hey, I'm going to get chunked out to about 10% of my HP before the Baron fight and give us no chance of contending with them.
Yeah, more to the point, you know, he just couldn't actually join the last team fight, which was 4v5.
Now, TOP echoing the same last bans. They want to take away these comfort picks. We were talking about how we want to see Rogue Warriors on something that is comfortable for them, fits into the team composition, fits into the meta. All 3 of those picks are things we have seen these players excel on and fit those criteria. So TOP still prioritizing taking those away.
Yeah, and so far nothing has really changed for this draft as opposed to game number 1, because you know that you just need to take off all of that is comfort for Rogue Warriors, and when everything else is standard, of course the Lissandra becomes top priority.
Now, Lissandra being picked up, like you said, that's probably going to go towards Knight once again, but I like this Irelia pickup for Rogue Warriors. We've seen HuaTian be very successful on it. I like quoting his scoreline 7-0 and 10 because I thought that was neat, especially when HuaTian was not really considered to be a fairly good mid laner. So we've seen him play this well. I want to see him play it again.
And I want to see just how well he can actually take this laning phase. Because with Irelia, the whole point before you start grouping up is that you want to dominate your lane. You're not really a champion who wants to move towards other parts of the map. You want other people to converge onto you. So he needs to have the 1v1 down packed before he can necessarily get that down. Another huge thing that I need to point out is, of course, the fact that it's now all been switched over. So we were talking about the priority on the Rek'Sai in the very first game. It's finally gone to fruition, and Rogue Warriors decide to take it up in their first rotation.
TOP, just sticking with the old standards, you know, they're subbing out the Rek'Sai for a J4. You still get the unique gank pass, you still get the good level 6, but they're going to keep the Kalista in rotation, and this was banned out last game. Rogue Warriors going to pick up the Kennen for ZhaoYun.
Yeah, as soon as it comes off of the ban list, they immediately pick it up for their team. They don't want to lose it on the second round. And look, without much surprise, of course that Gangplank is going to be taken off from 369. I want to see how exactly he counters this, whether he wants to go mano-a-mano with a damage champion as well to try to scale against ZhaoYun, or whether he decides to go the other way and pick up a full tank like the Silent Poppy.
If he is in a lane matchup that is losing this time, because I felt like Rogue Warriors matchups last time were pretty terrible for them, honestly, because we weren't like, oh, this is an easy lane for them. If 369 doesn't have that dynamic where he can poke out ZhaoYun, what does this lane look like suddenly? Are Rogue Warriors going to struggle in the early game as much?
Look, I still think that they need to make creative plays with the jungle in order to not struggle so much in the early game, but it's dependent on where exactly they want to focus it. That is very strange that we're seeing a Thresh fan out from Rogue Warriors, because immediately one thing that is highlighted in my mind is that 369 can pick up his signature Vladimir against this Kennen. Does very well because it's also range, and he can also win the trading potential. It's going to be a struggle if that is the choice.
The last 3 bans going over towards the bottom lane. Nobody wants any supports to come out, but if I were TOP, just for superstition's sake, I would have banned out this Ezreal.
Just for all time's sake. I mean, when you're an ADC player, you either prioritize the Ezreal or the Kalista, and when it comes to ZWuji, he definitely likes the poke potential coming out of that champion. Another huge thing that we want to talk about is the lack of supports that are available for both of these two teams. Naturally, Braum is still up, and without anybody else on the table, you would have to imagine that Rogue Warriors want to pick that one for themselves.
Well, they could go for the Braum, they can maybe go for the Gragas if you want that heavy poke into the lane, but ZWuji, I don't like having him have ultimate when a Baron is on the map. Because last time that did not go well for RNG. They also were a little overconfident. This would be an interesting pickup, actually, if they go for the Neeko, because that means that's probably on-hit Neeko top.
Yeah, that would be very bold as well. I'm not certain if they want to lock this in, but oh my...
All right.
Liberia, it's going to happen.
Cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be top lane. Traditional mages that have built towards AD. Obviously, Kennen goes more towards the AP this time round, but it's still going to be very interesting to see 369 take the early game into ZhaoYun, because at the very least, Kennen's Qs, they do a whole lot of damage. And if they can chunk you out, then that might be the impressing factor that RW need to even out the score.
And I've been told now, I'm no professional player. I'm no high elo streamer. I am no brain lag streamer to tell you specifically where this information came from.
I can confirm this.
But I've been told that press the attack on top Neeko or solo lane Neeko in any fashion is harder to get the trades down early. So like you're saying, with the damage coming in from ZhaoYun and the longer ramp-up time, we'll say, of the on-hit Neeko, this does change the dynamic of the top lane significantly from last time. And we have 2 very active early game junglers. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how that interaction comes forth. And I also like to point out, Morgana locked in for Huanggai. That's what he got his best performance on last series.
Yeah, I was just about to touch on that point. That Morgana is going to be huge. Let's quickly go back to your point before we go back down into the bottom lane. The fact that this top lane is so volatile, 2 damaging champions who aren't going to build tank early on into aggressive jungles, yeah, that's going to be hard. And while the Neeko does do very well in the middle of team fights, it's really the early game where she doesn't have attack speed and she needs to build it in the form of items as opposed to any of her natural abilities that will punish her.
You know, luckily it is 9.4. It's before the massive attack speed growth nerf came in. So we're going to see her eventually scaling up. But this is no longer a free lane for 369. And yes, he is a very talented player. Like we've said, one of the youngest players in the league at only 17 years of age. But he's inexperienced. You know, so's ZhaoYun. But you have 2 inexperienced top laners and suddenly you don't have as free of a matchup, no matter how talented you are, that does change things a bit.
Well, usually that does work towards your advantage, because when you're against somebody who you don't quite know, you don't pay the respects and you go full aggro. So if nobody wins in this matchup, then at the very least the viewers win, because it's going to be very explosive on the top side.
I'm looking forward to the team fights too. Just anytime a Kennen is on the map, I just want to see a bunch of team fights break out, because ZhaoYun has been so good on things like the Kled, so having him on another engaged champion like the Kennen, it's going to be an exciting way to start off Game 2 of TOP versus Rogue Warriors.
Did I just hear an EDG as well as a BLG coming out from the crowd?
The crowd doesn't know what they want today. They're really not feeling it here in Shanghai. Or they're feeling something, but
yeah, it's a little bit of
an active arena.
It's a little bit of a struggle coming into this one. So let's ignore the crowd for now, and let's actually talk about the lineups that we currently have, because one of the huge things is, of course, the Unsealed Spellbook coming out on Kennen. It means that not only does he have the teleport to always join the team fights, which will be his primary summoner spell, but he can also switch it out to an Ignite or even an Exhaust into 369, who can't really do any sort of shifty movements early on and get out of early trades. That could definitely win him something in the early game, maybe even a solo kill.
Yeah, giving him the Ignite kill pressure early on in the lane, that'd be super huge for him. So we'll see how that develops especially, but if we look at the junglers, both of them are just kind of chilling out a bit. XX looks like went straight red onto Scuttle. These are some weird paths coming out here so far, and XX both times going for this similar level of new pathing.
Yeah, this might be dangerous because he actually wants to go for a vertical farm. You can already see him try to make his way towards Xuzhu's blue, but it's going to be spotted out if nothing else for the safety. So I think that XX is simply trying to mind game out Xuzhu. So far it hasn't necessarily worked in his favor because it's taken him a little bit longer, but gold is still even, so nothing too much loss.
Well, it's taken him a lot of time, sure, but at the same time, you look now, he's going to get that second Scuttle Crab on the top side of the map, and now he wants to go for the invade onto the Raptors. So
no, you won't find anything here, mate.
Yeah, I mean, he's trying. I like him trying, but both junglers sort of trying to out-mind game each other there.
He does figure out the fact that Xuzhu started out on the top side, which means that, first of all, his bottom lane needs to be very careful because they're pushing up and Xuzhu is going down there.
He's got the E, level 3, forces out the heal, and barely has to do a thing. So he's going to back up, back towards that Gromp side, maybe farm up a little more.
That is a lot of respect coming out from the bottom lane. LokeN trying to get both of them out with that heal movement speed. Now that Xuzhu's done that, he can simply go back towards his farming, and we were just saying that there's a huge tempo advantage to the Rek'Sai because she hasn't had to waste any time on the map, and now XX is still behind even though he hasn't made that much of an impact.
Just going to see the Kennen start to farm up a little bit under tower. It's surprising to me that he's gotten shoved under tower already. Granted, I have not seen this matchup several times or anything, but that's a little shocking to me considering Kennen actually has some AoE.
I see what you did there, but it doesn't actually work out in his favor because he doesn't have that much in terms of pushing power in the early game. He needs the scaling with AP in order to successfully clear out waves, especially with the Proto Belt. 369 is going to have the shove. He's just going to lose the trades, but these trades aren't coming out because these minions are blocking out all of the shurikens.
Yeah, you know, Shuriken, the big weakness of it is that, you know, it doesn't go through minions, as it turns out. Sort of like the Ezreal Q we'll see on the bottom side of the map. So ZhaoYun a little bit low on CS, and that root is going to do so much damage. So ZhaoYun actually starting to lose these trades a little bit.
You can already see the prowess coming out from 369 because he goes to the trades when ZhaoYun is specifically ramping up an auto for the last hits. That's very smart play, and those are the sort of small things that will eventually turn a losing matchup into a winning one. The fact that you take these trades when ZhaoYun cannot respond onto you.
You also look at the pathing there from XX. He gave over the blue buff to Knight there, just getting his mid laner so much more ahead, giving them a whole lot of free sustain for the wave clear. XX having some really unique pathing this game, and it seems like it's working out so far for TOP.
He's just trying to completely bully out Xuzhu, to make sure that Xuzhu has a bad time. inside of the jungle and can't necessarily get to his power spikes before he starts ganking. I mean, if you can stop the Rek'Sai from ganking, then that's best case scenario, but now I think that ZhaoYun needs to be very careful. He should know the Jarvan's coming up.
He should be able to get it back in time, though, I think. Yeah, he's going to be fine. But this does mean XX and 369 can shove up, try and get some turret plating if they so desire. TP comes out from ZhaoYun, going to stop any chance of that, but 369 also gets a free back and is ahead in CS.
Now both of these two junglers are coming up to the mid lane, Niberia. This could be explosive.
One on either side. It looks like it's going to be a big jungler sandwich in the middle, if we can get it to happen, but it's going to be spotted out, pinged back. Neither side really wants to go for the aggression here. So they suspect there might be a little bit of trickery afoot, Preacher.
Yeah, and it was just really smart coming out from Xuzhu as well, because obviously the Rek'Sai being around for safety can spot out XX if he decides to hang back behind the minion wave where he isn't spotted out by vision. But now the crafty gank has moved towards the bottom side of the map. It's really good coming out of TOP because all of these lanes are doing relatively well to the point where they're pushing to the turrets, and they're not overexpending because they are putting down wards to make sure that they can't get ganked out.
That said, this game does feel, I'd say, a lot better for Rogue Warriors because they're not getting absolutely destroyed in any of the lanes. They don't have, like, super terrible matchups. But with Knight coming up to roam and look for the gank, this is starting to be scary.
I mean, it's very bold. If you catch Kennen while he's in his lightning rush, then you don't even do that much damage to him because he naturally tanks it out. So it's a little bit of wasted time for this team, but it could work towards their advantage because HuaTian is pushing to the turret and can get caught.
ZhaoYun now has picked up the Knight. He has the level 6, so if he wants to go for an all-in, it'll probably happen in the next few minutes because that's a lot of burst coming out. He has the Hextech Revolver up as well, but Rogue Warriors fighting over this red buff from the side of TOP, and I don't know if they can take this one. Xuzhu gets spotted out, but Blast Plant takes Ben away to safety.
Yeah, I was about to say that TOP could actually collapse on that so much faster because LokeN and ZWuji were both in the bottom lane fighting, so they could have both reached at the same time, but it was just diffused. After all that's said and done, Xuzhu manages to steal something back for himself.
So I've been assuming that if this lane gets delayed, 369 wins, but it's early and he's winning. So what are we looking at here in terms of this dynamic? Infernal Drake might be taken over by TOP.
I mean, we're looking at an MVP player, Niberia. It's just the fact that he knows his trade patterns. He knows exactly when to hit ZhaoYun because ZhaoYun is trying to go for the minions, and Kennen cannot respond to that early on. He needs to wait until his dash counter before he can even start outputting anything back.
Oh, John.
I mean, he tried it.
I respect it. I mean,
you have to.
After the last time he tried to steal something with an Ezreal ultimate, I personally would just go for it every single time. Be like, do I have ultimate and is there an objective on the map? 50-50.
You're going to be mad if he didn't go for it. But anyway, ZWuji, he's not going to lose too much because his ultimate isn't the primary pushing tool against this lane. He doesn't even want to push it out because anything past the river is extremely dangerous for the bottom lane. There is a control ward in the lane brush, in the river brush, sorry, which does stop Rogue Warriors from doing anything in terms of the bottom lane.
Rogue Warriors also a little bit low on mana there on ZhaoYun. He does have the tier picked up already, so he's going to start that stacking. Not quite able to afford the Sheen, I suspect. But he's not going to be dealing with a whole lot of items on the side of LokeN either, who only has the Zerker Greaves. But if you look at the mid lane, it tells a little bit of a different story in terms of items because Knight has gone for the very common Corrupting Potion double Dark Seal, and HuaTian just has the Corrupting Potion, so he's not got quite as much sustain.
Yeah, HuaTian doesn't have the efficiency that Knight has, which is eventually going to come back to bite him. It's not so far because Knight is and he's trying to get this onto the turret. Oh boy.
Huanggai pops the ultimate, misses the Dark Binding, but that's still an ultimate blown for pretty much nothing.
Yeah, and it's also really good that Huanggai used his Black Shield off cooldown. As soon as he ran into both of these two members, popped it, made sure that she couldn't actually get stunned up. Now Knight
waiting for the stun onto Knight, but it will not land. Quick fingers there on the mid laner of TOP. Going to keep him safe, and he will now get another blue buff.
Let's actually look forward towards the team fights, if indeed there are any this game, Niberia, because when we take stock of TOP, their wombo combo is insane. If XX can trap 2 or even 3 people of Rogue Warriors inside his Cataclysm, that's pretty much a good Knight combo coming out from TOP. You've got the Neeko jumping in, as well as the Galio. There's not a lot to say, and Rogue Warriors, they need to play this in terms of splitting as opposed to fighting straight out.
ZhaoYun has to blow that Ignite as it was about to expire, but XX is here in the
He
top
knows
lane.
this.
He has the ultimate still available, so if he can get the stun off ahead of time, looks like he will be able to force XX off.
Yeah, it was a good little diffuse coming out, and now Xuzhu might be looking for a return gank because TOP are naturally looking for the place.
Huanggai and ZWuji as well. Oh, that's a lot of damage
no!
into Xuzhu. Pretty much instantly, he will get the knockup, but the teleport coming in as well. First blood already down, but they're not happy with it. Knight goes in, Frozen Tomb down. ZhaoYun uses the Slicing Maelstrom. The double kill already coming in for 369. Looks like that's all they'll be able to get before Rogue Warriors are here to respond. HuaTian looking for XX on the side. ZWuji barely alive. 369 finally taken out by the ultimate of Huanggai, and XX as well falls. 2 for 2 in the top lane.
Huge question mark pings coming out from Xuzhu, asking his top laner, where exactly were you? I was trying to engage onto the top and jungle duo of TOP, but instead you were just hanging back towards the turret. Still works out really well for them in the end, just because they were rotating fast enough, but it was a little bit of miscommunication that we do have to criticize.
But Rogue Warriors have preemptively rotated their bot lane up to the top side, which gives them a lot of pressure now onto this Rift Herald they're trying to take.
It's going to be theirs for the control anyway, because when you check out the minimap, a whole lot of vision is placed towards the top side. It's pretty much lit up like a Christmas tree. You can't go anywhere on the top side as TOP without being spotted out, and that just gives Rogue Warriors so much confidence and comfort to take out that Rift Herald.
ZhaoYun barely saving the tower there. That was a little bit cheeky because it's not going to be there for much longer, but let's look at this top gank again.
Yeah, it was a miscommunicated engage coming out from Xuzhu, because as soon as he gets rooted up, 369 jumps in with his ultimate, locks him down. But the other members are roaming up, specifically HuaTian from the mid lane. Even though ZhaoYun is caught up in this part, the fact that ZWuji and also Huanggai can stick around because they know that HuaTian is coming up is all that they needed. And 369 splits from the rest of the crowd, which does catch him down.
Huanggai and ZWuji playing that fight so carefully, though. Really the power duo here for Rogue Warriors. Huanggai, this is just his 4th game, man, but he's still looking pretty good. But right now, they're not the only one left on their team, and once again, the top lane seems to be a weak point for them. ZhaoYun down almost 30 CS at this point. He's just stuck bot lane. They've left him there while Rogue Warriors send their bot lane up top to stop the incessant pushing of 369.
We were also counting the amount of CS and kills as a good indication of this game, but we should also be taking a look at the turret plating from both of these two teams, because TOP has constantly been pushing up towards Rogue Warriors, and a huge amount of that discrepancy that you see in the gold is from the fact that turret plating has been so effective. 1 minute left. Let's see how much of this that Rogue Warriors can take, because they're just 5-manning mid. This is a round.
Minute left on turret plating, and 369 going to try and solo push that. Rogue Warriors just want the consolation prize. They think this mid lane tower is going to be it. But the Rift Herald so low, all they think they're going to get is going to be that turret plating.
Yeah, and instead of going for the mid death ball, they're going towards the dragon death ball. Still a little bit of a bait in the early game. I don't think it's big enough that TOP necessarily want to contest it, but they call the TP anyway.
TP coming in from 369, so they do have the 5v5 here towards the Dragon. Dragon's at about half health at this point. XX wants to go for the steal. Fate's Call comes in. Dragon secured by Rogue Warriors, but the fight has broken out, and they are losing so much health. ZhaoYun tries to save the fight with the Slicing Maelstrom, and he'll barely be able to contain the side of TOP. ZWuji and Huanggai, the last 2 remaining for their team, as 4 kills go over to TOP. ZWuji needs to find a way out.
Oh boy, huge play coming out from Knight. He just pops off because he's not the focal point of TOP. When you've got a Jarvan jump in, when you've got a Neeko with her ultimate as well, not actually used in that last team fight, naturally your ADC and your mid laner is just going to be running rampant. And of course, Knight picking up 3 kills for himself, that's going to be really tough for Rogue Warriors to deal with, because we always know that Knight can push down these turrets solo.
Well, this isn't as clean a game as last game was for TOP, but it is certainly looking just as dominating, especially this team fight.
It was called in by LokeN. He primarily throws Ben in to make sure that he can taunt some people. Huge 2-man taunt, decent enough to win out the team fight. And while there is a response with the Slicing Maelstrom, ZhaoYun just gets taken down before he can actually DPS as opposed to just CC. And Huanggai, of course, consolation.
Knight was able to get so much done in that fight, just getting the roots on everyone, so much AoE damage coming out from that Lissandra. And now 3-0-2, 8 stacks on the Dark Seals, and you know, he's got the Luden's Echo, he's got the Sork Boots, and a ton of damage.
And he's also got the stacks to his name as well. I wouldn't even be surprised if one of them turned into a Medjay's, because we've seen Knight do it. Yeah, it is, of course, his type of style. And on his type of champion as well, he's sitting very comfy. Not as comfy as the very first game, though, I should mention, because the gold is much, much closer.
Yeah, just a 4K lead. And they have evened out the dragons. That's worth mentioning for Rogue Warriors, because that Infernal Drake is something that snowballs upon itself if you can end up stacking it up. So TOP were denied that, but they did get 4 kills in that fight, which is really bad for Rogue Warriors.
Just means that Rogue Warriors are going to fight an uphill battle once more, but they are used to it. They are certainly used to biding their time until an objective comes up. So TOP, once again, I think that the greatest strength that they have as a team is simply to know the win conditions of their enemies and try to deny it away as much as possible. In this game, they tried to play around the objectives even though they didn't have the vision advantage for themselves. It worked out, I'd say, 7 out of 10.
I mean, that's a pretty good grade right there, 7 out of 10. That's still passing. C's get degrees, or in this case, series victories. So TOP looking pretty. In the top lane, 369 once again is a huge highlight for them. 2-1-1, up 40 CS now on this Neeko top. We're talking about how she has a little bit of a phase where she needs to build the attack speed items and doesn't get to do a whole lot until then, but I feel like that's sort of been skipped at this point, almost to the Ginsus as well as the Blade of the Ruin King. So that's a lot of attack speed, a lot of on-hit damage already in the pocket of the top laner for, well, TOP.
Yeah, this is it. This is pretty much what Neeko was trying to scale towards. Now it's up to ZhaoYun to see if he can make the same amount of effort. We were talking about his dash cannon power spike, but it's a little bit too late in comparison to his lane opponent. Realistically, right now, he needs to hit the Zhonya's point to make sure that he doesn't actually die by the time that his ultimate is fully channeled. Take a look at that punishment. I mean, we were already talking about 369 getting the attack speed. He's using it.
That was just like 2 autos, too, on the ZhaoYun, so there's not a whole lot he can do without a full engage. And since TOP just have the better amount of members here, there's no chance of that for Rogue Warriors. So they're once again getting choked out. Look at the vision for TOP. Absolutely dominant here on the side of Rogue Warriors' blue buff.
Let's just talk about the objectives that are about to come up. 1 minute until Mountain Drake. Naturally, TOP, because they have the push, also have the priority on the Dragon. All they need to do now is to set up wards, which are alright for the bottom lane so far. They can certainly spot out the 2 main entrances, but still can't be caught out.
Oh, HuaTian goes for the flash, but he lands the Vanguard's Edge onto LokeN. Good taunt is going to stop him for now. The re-engage coming in. Fate's Call knocks up onto HuaTian. HuaTian, first one to go down, but LokeN as well falls on the backside. So now Rogue Warriors have knocked out the AD carry of TOP, and XX fighting with ZWuji there on the top side of the fight. ZWuji not going to be able to get the kill, but someone might be able to follow up. Xuzhu doesn't have the damage for it, and now Knight chasing down. ZWuji needs to stay alive if he can. Not quite able to find the kill. Nobody from TOP has died.
Well, TOP, they managed to negotiate that team fight very well for themselves, even kiting back to the point that they bait ZWuji back in to try and get a kill. It was pretty much TOP's game to lose, and they play it out to the point where they can start getting huge objective control. It was all initiated by HuaTian. The rest of his team is chasing up, and they know that there are 2 split pushes on the side lanes, especially the Neeko, who cannot join faster than the Kennen. But all of this goes awry, because if you take a look at Ben, he is pretty much caught out in this situation. And on the top side, I really just want to point out XX, how he survives through all of this. Uses his W, and he gets the Conqueror. I'm not the Conqueror, what is it? The Triumph for the extra HP.
ZWuji just barely short on damage there. Then Xuzhu just could not follow up, being stunned up for so long. And now TOP will be able to take down this Mountain Drake. Baron spawning in just 50 seconds, so that's another opportunity for them to push the objectives. Still have not lost a tower.
Yeah, and the funny thing is that even though TOP are in the lead, Rogue Warriors still have the superior vision advantage around the Baron. So they can still play off of this. They can go there, clear out wards, and be safe in the knowledge that they know where TOP is, in stark contrast to the other team. TOP, they need to work their way in and slowly, methodically clear out all of these wards they don't necessarily know the positions of.
Rogue Warriors can play around the Baron, sure, but the question is how effectively they can really do that. If you look at the gold lead, it's 7K almost in just a 19-minute game, almost going to be 20. So now Rogue Warriors at a massive gold disadvantage, and yes, they have the vision advantage over the Baron, but just look at what TOP are doing. They're splitting up the map and calling pressure across the entirety of it.
going to say that Rogue Warriors would be very comfortable playing around that Baron simply because we've already seen them group up as a 5-man 10 minutes into the game. I don't have a problem with it, especially not if there's an objective to take. They took an Infernal Drake last time, and with Baron on the board, we all know Rogue Warriors' affinity towards Baron, so it definitely has to be a focal point for them, knowing that they have vision.
At the very least, ZWuji is still getting to scale up. He has his Iceborne Gauntlet, Mana Moon, fully stacked, already transformed, and he's working towards the Archangels. But they're looking to duo this Baron here, 369 and XX. But there's so much damage coming out from 369 that this is pretty easy for them, it looks like.
Yeah, it's all Blade the Ruin King damage. The percentage is too much, and Rogue Warriors, they have the vision, but not on the Baron itself. It goes completely to the wayside.
So TOP just sneak away the Baron, duoing it so easily. 369 has been absolutely instrumental in both of these games so far this series. It feels like ZhaoYun has just been outclassed.
Definitely feels that way, especially in terms of the mechanics of the lane, because it's not easy to win a losing matchup, but when you do it so convincingly and you get yourself enough of a lead that you can actually two-person Baron, yeah, that's the punishing factor for Rogue Warriors. They didn't even know it because while they had deep wards, they were too deep, not anywhere around the Baron, and they had eyes on 3 members, which dissuaded them from thinking that the Baron was even being taken.
Rogue Warriors just cannot give up at this point. Yes, there's the Baron buff on the side of TOP. Almost 3 minutes remaining on it, but they are in their last series before they get knocked out of playoff contention entirely. They were able to take down RNG. Yes, TOP are higher in the standings than RNG, but they are both incredibly good teams. If they can do it once, we're hoping they can do it again.
It's all about the mentality as well coming into this. Because you've defeated RNG, you know that you can take this game slow and methodically to the point where you should be refining your style as opposed to playing things aggressively and pushing for what might not be an optimal amount of gameplay. We thought that it was scary seeing 369 so early in the game bullying out ZhaoYun, but now it's the even scarier bit because Knight is allowed to split push once again, and we have seen many times Knight outplay a 1v1 split push.
Oh, absolutely, you know, and this game is no exception. He has no deaths so far, the only one on his team able to make that claim. 3-0-3. He's got the Zhonyas as well, so that's a lot of playmaking potential on top of the Frozen Tomb.
They won't be going back in the next 1 minute 30 either because they're trying to push as much of the pressure as they can. It's going to be a mid lane take. That's going to be their priority because that opens up the entire jungle, both segments, to TOP.
Xuzhu maybe looking for a Knight there, but both he and XX are going to make it out of this one. You know, minute 30 left on the Baron. Minute 30 roughly until Infernal spawns. So if this doesn't work for TOP, they can just rotate down to the bottom side of the map, pick up their second Infernal of the game, and then they're sitting pretty still.
They were losing out on the scaling because they lost out on one of the Infernal Drakes, but getting 2v1 will put them right back into the driver's seat, and there's not a lot that Rogue Warriors can do in terms of getting control of the bottom side of the map, so it's going to be easy days, but in the bottom lane, that was already a turret taken down.
Yeah, and it looks like 369 isn't stopping. He's still full health. ZhaoYun looking for the flank, but not going to be able to find the angle. And now Rogue Warriors looking for the fight here inside the mid lane. LokeN just going to farm it out. Baron still remaining for 45 seconds, but 369 is being such a nuisance in the bottom side of the map.
Yeah, 369 is the split pusher that we all need to keep our eyes on because, take a look, he's already starting to wail down onto this inhibitor, and while he does, everybody else gets free calls into the mid lane.
TOP have a lot of options here. They just took down the inhibitor in the bottom lane. They also have the top lane. They're getting engaged on a little bit by Rogue Warriors, but the Vanguard's Edge just forces them off shortly. And now they're going to go in. Knight, so much damage, bursting out ZhaoYun immediately. HuaTian falls as well. Rogue Warriors are just getting absolutely dunked here as XX gets the last kill. And now it's going to be 2-0 for TOP, and Rogue Warriors' hopes for playoffs look to have been dashed.
It's just very clean gameplay coming out from TOP. They know the strengths of RW. They take him all down systematically to make sure that RW don't actually have win conditions. And then at that point onwards, they just use their superior mechanics to outplay.
Really, really disappointing here for Rogue Warriors. You know, after coming in with a victory over RNG, we were hoping they'd come back, show that that wasn't just a fluke. And it wasn't, to be fair. They showed sparks of brilliance in this series, but TOP, just the better mechanical players, the better macro players, showed why they're at the top of the standings here in the LPL.
Yeah, and I just want to touch on the point that even though Rogue Warriors might not have won this series, a desperately needed win going into their future matchups, they still showed signs of life, so it still is a very good showing from from them. However, TOP having the superior, showing their superior on the day, this is definitely going to be helpful because extra points means that you're going to be pulling away from FPX, from IG, and at the top of the ladder, it's starting to look a little bit lonely.
And it's hard to point out exactly how TOP won that game because you could just really pick an element of League of Legends that isn't Baron stealing, and TOP did it better. They played the lanes better. They played the macro better. They played the rotations better. They played around their objectives better. They pushed their lead better. Granted, Rogue Warriors weren't even given the chance to get a lead.
I mean, that was really what we expected coming out of this team. They're looking to define themselves as one of the best teams in the LPL going into playoffs, and having such a showing inside of this series, even though they didn't have perfect games, they might as well been because they were so dominant from the get-go. If you take a look at the gold graphs of both of these two games, I don't think there was ever a point in which they were even hiccuping to give it away to Rogue Warriors, and that's what you want to be going into the later part of this split.
Yeah, exactly like you said. That graph is basically just a one-to-one slope downward in favor of TOP in terms of the gold, and they were able to get so much done, and really no one necessarily committed more into the fights, but it was a lot of the pressure once again coming out from the split push of 369.
Yeah, and we were talking about the front to back. You know, once you have the tank line absorbing all of the damage with the engages as well, you can have your back line doing all of the work without actually being focused down. And we saw Knight be the majority of that, because in the very first fight, a triple kill, yeah, that just accelerated him all the way throughout the game.
Yeah, Knight was kind of playing like, well, he was playing like Knight. And
Yeah.
it's very easy to just use that as a shorthand. You guys saw his stats at the beginning of the series. He was #1 in pretty much everything, and he's showing why. You know, he had such lane dominance. He controlled HuaTian for the entirety of both games. So with that and 369 being able to completely outplay ZhaoYun just on lane mechanics alone, there wasn't much that XX wasn't able to do. So he was able to hand over the blue buffs. He was able to go for these weird pathings that sort of punished Rogue Warriors a little bit in terms of time. And he was wasting a lot of time, sure, but when you don't need to do much as a jungler, why not?
I mean, you're really sitting in the best possible spot, right? You're in the condition in which you don't need to outfarm your enemy jungler, because you know that if you ever fight, your laners are going to join before their laners do. All you need to do is get vision down onto the enemy jungler. Wow, I saw him at his blue. Great. All of a sudden, your bottom lane starts playing safe. You can start playing towards the top side of the map, and you just let your laners have natural priority. There was pretty much no condition in which Rogue Warriors could have pulled off a successful gank, even a lane gank of that kind, and that was really the punishing factor, because obviously Rogue Warriors need to get ahead somehow, and they just couldn't find any avenues.
No, and it's a sad day when we have to announce that a team is out of the playoffs. Rogue Warriors is that team this time, but it's worth noting that this gives them the unique opportunity as the first team out of the playoffs to have the most games to improve, because Rogue Warriors, I mean, coming into it, they did not look strong. And especially compared to last split where they were able to take first in their conference, that's kind of sad. It's a little bit sad as the team owner, as the manager, being like, oh, well, we just went from one of the best teams in the league to a complete roster of rookies. But these are promising rookies. We saw them take a win over RNG, and they fought fairly valiantly against TOP, even though they were pretty much choked out. But now what they need to focus on is next split. Their development towards summer split, looking towards Worlds. Because this first split, yeah, they didn't do great. But if they absolutely dominate second split, they still have a chance to get into Worlds. They still have a chance to develop as a team. And that's what I'm excited to see from them.
Yeah, and I just want to say that 5 rookies means that you actually have a chance to develop your own playstyle. If you're always bringing in these old players with their own playstyles, everybody else needs to mold towards them. But if you have 5 new players, you can develop your own. These mechanics will come in time, because these players can just play in solo queue, develop that up. It's really the teamwork and the strategies they need to bond as a team for the remainder of the split in the games.
And it's interesting, too, because you come with a team that at the earlier half of the split didn't really have an identity. Still, I would argue, don't have much of one outside of ZWuji being a core carry player. And then suddenly you take away the one guiding voice they had, which was Killua, the veteran who had the most experience on Rogue Warriors. He had an entire year of experience under his belt before this. You bring in someone from the LDL who hasn't played a single split here in the LPL. And honestly, they kind of look better, which is such a weird thing to say, but it's so promising because, like you said, these players can be developed. And the LPL is the best place to develop players if you think about it, because they're always going to be playing above them. If you just take an LDL squad that normally gets absolutely smashed, you bring them into the LPL, they will eventually start to develop because they're playing against a much higher talent.
And I also want to provide a defense onto that point, Nibiria, because I can't really let you go off and say that Huanggai is that new player coming in, because obviously he had an MVP performance. He came up massive against RNG. Obviously, this is a squad with a lot of potential. I think that if they develop this squad, they need to keep these core 5 players, because they already have the experience of working as a team, and going into the future, that's what they need to look towards.
Yeah, you know, their series coming up, I would say, are a lot less contentious than this one, because they have Vici, OMG, and I believe WE still on their plate, and those teams are, while still competitive, and especially WE that we saw earlier today, that's going to be a little bit scarier than the other 2 teams. But Vici, OMG are good teams for them to try and rekindle that flame that they had against RNG, find out what exactly worked for them and what they can move forward with. But for TOP, this is a different trend for them. They need to figure out what went wrong in the little points where they lost control. Like the Baron steal is...
It might be out of your hands.
Yeah, that one's a little bit hard. I mean, they also took it from RNG, so you can say, hey, RNG are a big competition. They also lost the Baron steal. Let's just ignore that one for now. Maybe you can say that, maybe not. Maybe that's something you want to go over. But more, where do you want to focus on the rest of your map? What didn't work out? And I think one point where Rogue Warriors actually had the advantage over TOP at certain points was the vision control.
Yeah, I mean, that even though they lost out on the Baron in the second part of the game, that the fact that those wards were placed so beautifully along the entire ring of the entrance towards the Baron pit, yeah, it was definitely huge praise going over to Rogue Warriors, because they could lock that down. They could know for certain whenever the enemy went in. So, obviously, TOP, they need to work on that. They need to work on the fact that when they start pushing up aggressively, because they can get these early leads from their mechanics, they need to be dropping down wards. They need to get vision down to know where the enemy are. Because one of the clearly defined play styles that they have is denying the enemy's win conditions and then just winning through their mechanics. A good way to do that is to catch people out in rotation.
And to be fair, they were able to do that in the later stages of the game after they cleared out the vision, after they moved around, and a lot of that was enabled through XX, their jungler, who was also going to be the MVP for this series. I was really happy with his early pathing, especially because he was an absolute monster.
Absolutely. Just spotting out the enemy's jungle. I'm pretty sure that Xuzhu didn't really spend any time beyond the early game where he wasn't in vision of TOP. So doing his job, not necessarily carrying the rest of his team, but making sure that they don't fall to their enemies, you've got to give praise to XX for that.
You know, and 92% kill participation. There's only so much you can talk about there, but...
Well, of course, when you talk about that kill participation, it is from a lack of teamfights as well. There were only a couple of noticeable ones coming out for this team, but all of the ones that did happen were more or less even. It was the picks that came out ahead for TOP. So you got to say how exactly this MVP player really did it for the team. Baiting out the enemy to really jump in there, taking a whole lot of the damage but not falling as well. Yeah, that was XX's primary role.
And that was kind of the moment where he shined the most in that fight, because if he had not been able to stall that time, if ZWuji's focus had been pretty much anywhere else, I think that fight would have gone a lot more in Rogue Warriors' favor, because ZWuji was putting out a lot of damage, but all of it was focused onto XX. XX did such a great job of pulling away the aggro in the few fights that did exist and did end up happening and going TOP's way.
Yeah, I mean, frontliners can get MVPs as well. That's a huge point out to everybody in solo queue. Don't try to carry your games, because obviously everybody needs a frontline. Apart from that, TOP, they know what they're doing, especially in the champ select, you know, absolutely denying out the enemy. Of course, you want to play through bottom lane. We're going to deny that by getting a whole lot of champions that can gank early on, get vision to make sure that you can't gank early on. It's a smart play that's coming out from this team that every other team have to fear coming into the later half of the split.
Yeah, TOP are a menace. They've been able to show different styles, and today they showed a lot of the Neeko a little bit. Neeko top, I think, is the most important development from that. But we're going to have JDG versus Suning coming up next very soon. So stick around. We'll be back with the e-commerce war.